Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy Psycho, and I've got my very first Preacher review of the series premiere. Now, before I even go into anything, I just want to say right off the bat, I am very sick right now, and I've been sick for the past few days, and I thought about not doing this review, but then again I thought, no, I can't do that. That would be a disservice to my viewers that have been waiting to see this review, so I felt like I just needed to power through and do this review for you guys, and hopefully you all will understand my terrible sounding voice right now. But basically my plans were, on Sunday night, I was going to review Fear the Walking Dead, and then right after the next day, I was going to review Preacher. Well, I woke up that morning and I was just really sick, and it would have just sounded even worse if I had done it that day. So I just figured I would do this for you guys, and I wanted to explain that really quick of why this is late, because for the next few Sundays I'm going to have the review out as soon as the episode airs, maybe an hour or two later. I know this most likely won't get that many views, but in the end it's not about that. It's about doing the things I love and also share those things with the people that enjoy watching. Anyways, I'm going to get right into it. Let's start off here. The episode had a really cool intro in my opinion. The cheesiness of the intro is what was so cool to me. They didn't deal with the intro like they really tried hard on the CGI. And in my opinion, I think that was a good way to show the space intro, because that would probably cost a lot with CGI and stuff, so by showing it cheesier, it saved them money, but the audience members could also accept that because it was cheesy on purpose, so I really enjoyed it and I thought that was pretty cool. In addition to that, we finally get to the church in Africa, and we see this preacher and a bunch of people preaching, and some sort of spirit comes down from space, and we see that it kind of goes into him, and everybody thinks, oh, we've got the prophet's here, and the guy just explodes. That was definitely a huge surprise to me, and a way to start out this episode with a bang. I realized that there was more to this as we saw different types of people exploding throughout the world of different religions and everything else. Just to mention, one of the really funny ones that I saw was where it said Tom Cruise from the Church of Scientology exploded. That was just so funny, I thought. That was an awesome pop culture reference. We move on over to the main character of the series, and this man is Jesse Custer, also known as the Preacher. Within this first 5 minutes, we realize that this is going to be a comedy series. Just because of what we see on that church sign, we know that there are going to be some comedy elements within this show, especially with Seth Rogen producing it. We realize that this preacher is new to this position because we see that he is not familiar with all of this preaching and everything, so we know that he is new to that position, and it also makes you wonder whether he really believes in that. It then moves on to the talk with the preacher and the boy wants the preacher to hurt his dad because he's beating his wife. Not only was this an interesting scene, but it gave us insight to who the preacher was before he was a preacher. The next scene that comes out of nowhere is the scene with Cassidy. We see that he looks to be maybe a flight attendant. I'm not really sure on that, but that's what it looked like to me given his outfit and everything. But he's making jokes with all of these guys on this plane, and then he goes to the bathroom where he finds a Bible with things written in it. For some reason, this makes him a little suspicious, and he goes back out there and asks them why are they flying towards the sun. And as I'm saying this right now, I literally just realized why he was questioning this. I'm going to touch on that in just a minute. This is where everything gets a little intense, and then he says he was just joking. He punches the guy in the face, and this is where shit really hits the fan. The way they filmed the action scene was really interesting because it felt extremely fast-paced, and I believe that not only did the actors move fast-paced, but it was also the way that they filmed it, and I'm starting to think that maybe that's the way Seth Rogen envisioned it. That's just his style, so it's kind of growing on me. I wasn't really sure about first, but when we got the bar fight scene, I got a little more used to it, and I'm actually starting to like it now. What really surprised me, though, was when people were coming out with crossbows and golf clubs and spears, and I'm thinking, where the hell did all that come from? It makes you wonder that these aren't just a normal group of people, and that there are probably more to their characters. I guess not anymore after Cassidy's done with them, though. As he stabs the wine bottle into the other guy, we notice the guy behind him throws holy water on him, and he basically just laughs him off. And this points to the idea that they think this man is some sort of demon or some sort of vampire, which I'm going to touch on in just a second. I'm going to talk about my thoughts on who this person might actually be. A really funny part from that scene, in my opinion, was where he literally gets a glass, tips the bottle over from the guy's stomach, and then extracts all of the blood into the bottle and drinks it. And that was just pretty crazy. Also, not to mention him biting that guy behind him and basically eating him alive in the neck. He jumps out of the airplane with the umbrella, and then later on after a few scenes, we see that he has created a crater in the ground, and he's split in half, but he's still alive. We see him eat the cow, and this is where the moment where I'm really starting to think this guy may be a vampire. And I'm not really sure on this because I've never read the comics, but in my opinion, this is what it's starting to look like. My reasoning for this is because they tried to throw holy water on him, which is a weakness of vampires. That didn't work. He bit a guy's neck and got the blood out of it. He extracted blood from a guy's stomach and drank it. He fell like thousands of feet from the sky, got split in half, and still survived. He questioned why they were flying towards the sun. And in the very end of the episode, it shows him sitting behind a barn, and he holds his arm out in front of the sun, and it catches on fire. And I actually thought that was a pretty cool moment, just because of the misleading factor that could possibly be there, because I think some audience members might think he was just forming a fireball in his hand, but to me it looked more like his weakness was the sun, and he couldn't put his arm out there where it would catch on fire like we've seen in other vampire movies. Anyways, that's just my opinion and predictions. I think Cassidy is a very cool character to see so far. Moving on over to Tulip, we get her scene with her driving in the car, and that was a pretty action-filled scene. The only negative thing that I have to say about that scene was when they were in the car and they were driving through the cornfield. Some of that did feel a little cheesy, but it also makes me wonder, did Seth Rogen intend it to look cheesy? Once again, the action scenes were filmed very quickly, and then she bites the guy's ear off, which was pretty crazy. However, not as crazy as shoving a corn cob down the guy's throat. When I saw that, I thought, did she really just shove a motherfreaking corn dog down his dang throat? That was just another touch on the comedy aspect of this show, and I thought it was pretty entertaining. After that, she builds a bazooka with the kids, and then we see as she locks them in the cellar. As they come out, we see that she has shot down a helicopter and killed some people with what looked like army men. This makes you wonder what's going on with Tulip and what her past is involving with herself right now because of the fact that there are people in helicopters trying to get to her. This presents an interesting storyline that I'm very excited to see in the future. Meanwhile, we see Jesse Custer. He's parked out in his car drinking some liquor, and then the sheriff comes and walks over to him. He talks to the sheriff about the wife that is supposedly getting beaten up and stuff, and then the sheriff states, if we don't get a formal complaint, I'm not doing anything about it. And that's one of the first moments where we realize that this town is pretty corrupt, especially with the sheriff who just wants the redneck vote. Jesse Custer goes and talks to the wife and gets the confirmation that she is being beaten, but she likes it. He returns to a bar where he meets the husband back from a Civil War reenactment, and I just love this scene just because the husband came in so confident and cocky that he could beat the preacher up, and then the preacher just handed his ass to him. That was just an awesome scene in my opinion, and that was one of the moments where I started getting used to and even liked the fast-paced filming of the action. We then see that he breaks his arm like a boss, and he's put in jail with Cassidy. Cassidy makes a joke to Jesse in that jail about being a preacher, and he said something where I was like, did he really just say that? And I thought, holy crap, I can't believe they just showed that on live TV. Even though he wasn't cussing or anything, it was pretty bad. This is where Jesse Custer first meets Cassidy, and I feel like they're going to get a little more familiar along the line. We then get some action between Jesse Custer and Tulip, and we realize that Tulip is more than just a person to Jesse, and that she's possibly an old flame for him. This is most likely one of the reasons he left in one of the first scenes, when he realized he came into the room and that she was in the shower. Of course, she's trying to get him on this big plan. He's refusing. He doesn't want to go back to his old life. And she repeats the statement over and over, "You are who you are." After that, we move on to a really cool scene that I enjoyed, and this is where Jesse Custer goes to the sheriff's house and talks to the person who I'm aware of to be known as Arseface, which is the guy who has something wrong with his face, and the way they handled this scene, I really enjoyed it. Even though his face looked really weird, they handled it in a very serious manner, and it was very fresh to see this happening on a show that pretty much had comedy every 5 minutes. I like the fact that they handled this seriously just because of the fact that the guy was asking Jesse, will God forgive you no matter what you do? And in retrospect, Jesse is thinking himself, he's wondering that same question, is God going to forgive him for what he's done in the past? And I believe that is something they handled well, just because they didn't explain everything and what's going on with Jesse, but you realize it within his facial emotions that that's exactly what's going on. By telling him that God forgives no matter what, he kind of gave himself a sense of that idea, and he started to believe it a little bit, especially when he came back to the church. He gets down on his knees and asks forgiveness from God for what he's done in the past. He doesn't get an answer. He gets up, and then he cusses at God, and this is where the spirit, or whatever that thing was, busts open the church doors, and then basically goes into Jesse. The interesting thing about this, though, is that usually the preacher explodes, but in this case, Jesse didn't explode. And one of the reasons for this that I'm kind of leaning to is maybe because Jesse's religion is Christian, however the ones such as Scientology, the one in Africa, and the one in Russia is not a Christian god, at least to what I'm thinking about. It also may be a part in Jesse simply being possibly that chosen one that can survive the spirit being within him and do many things with those powers. Of course they do seem to be powers simply because of that one man that had been aggravating him throughout the whole episode. He finally tells him for the last time, open your heart and tell her what you really feel. We see that the man really takes this into consideration and then finally accepts it. He makes it his mission to run across the field, get in an airplane, and fly all the way over to what I believe is his mother. And the interesting thing is that it really started off normally. He's telling her how he really felt. He's saying that you need to take my feelings and thoughts into consideration. And this is where everything gets crazy. I was not expecting this at all. He cuts open his chest, rips his heart out, and then gives it to his mom. And this is where you realize that he took the literal translation from the preacher and did exactly what he said. That's the moment where you know for a fact that Jesse has been given new powers. Now I'm still wondering whether the spirit is evil or not, and my reasoning for this is, although of course these things are happening such as people dying because of this spirit, however, it wouldn't really make sense due to the fact that he's in church and he cusses God, and this is where the spirit occurs. So I feel like if it was an evil spirit, cussing God wouldn't make the evil spirit come to you, it would sort of make like God go after you. It feels like it would be more of an attack on God, therefore that thing would come from his realm, considering you just offended him. However, I'm kind of iffy on that, just because you don't think of God as someone who sends a spirit out to kill people, so that's what makes this thing interesting. Anyways, these are just my thoughts and opinions upon this episode. I really think that this TV show is a brand new fresh take on TV series. We don't really see any other TV shows having the guts to pull off episodes like this that are just absolutely crazy. I also like the fact that these characters are being handled in different scenes to where we're learning more things about them as the scenes go on, and everything isn't blended together, so we learn more about their storylines separately and then we're able to piece them together on our own. I'm also trying to get used to the comedy aspect of this just because I'm not used to watching shows that are a drama and also a comedy at the same time. I think I know the comic does have some comedy into it. I'm not sure if it's to this extent. However, it's just something I'm getting used to, but I think this show is really fresh. It's something that you can sit down, have a lot of fun watching, and it's also for those people that want to read in deeper as well. It's that balance that is very important in my opinion. Before I end this review, I want to note one more thing, and this is where the two guys that had been in Africa to investigate the guy exploding, they came to that small town of Texas, right to where the preacher was. So this means that whatever that spirit was that was in the other people that exploded is now in Jesse Custer, and they're investigating that. So I definitely believe this is going to involve a lot more conflict and things in the future, so it's really going to be interesting in my opinion. As always, I really appreciate you all watching. It honestly means so much to me. Please make sure to leave a like on this video to show some support. It always helps out an absolute ton and more than you guys would ever know. Also, make sure to subscribe here if you are new. I plan on doing more Preacher news videos, reviews, and thoughts, so make sure to stay tuned for that. I really appreciate it once again, guys. Peace out.